Hello again. This is another one of those going to sleep story thingies, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll just put a description inside the pinned comment, I guess. But this one is way longer than the last one, as you could see. It's about the climax of Change Your Mind. I changed a few things. I guess you could consider it the rewritten version of it. No huge things changed. Steven still gets his gem ripped out, except it's mostly just dialogue changes and a few different characters being in different places. But other than that, I was super proud of it, and I wanted to show you guys. So here we go. I'm gonna start now. Bye. Hope you like it. Smash! Obsidian's black glass body was squashed into the building, between the window panes and the mech ship's face. Pain exploded through their form, and they fell apart instantly, forcefully ripped to their 5 pieces. Stephen was back now. The echoes of the pain of Obsidian were still rippling through his mind, his whole body feeling numb, clinging to the crevice-covered cheek of the mech, the cold air whipping past him. All of them were shocked like he was, using all of their willpower to just keep a hold of the grooves in the mech's face, to not fall off into the deadly drop below. Gravity lurched, the mech ship getting up again, and Stephen was nearly ripped off of its face simply by the force of its head moving back, trying to shake them off. His fingers were sore from holding on, clinging so tightly into a groove in the face that he couldn't feel his hands. "Don't let go, don't let go, don't fall, don't fall." "Up here!" he heard Garnet's voice from somewhere above him. "We could get in through the eye." Stephen dared to look up, the lopsided world circling around him, the mech still straightening up. He could see the others holding on for dear life like he was, and he could see Garnet's hand pointing up to the room-sized eye of the ship. The pupil was a corridor, leading into the inside of White's head. The others, Garnet, Amethyst, and Pearl, were already climbing. Stephen wanted to follow them, but an instinctual fear kept him rooted there, not wanting to let go of the holds that he already had, too scared of slipping. And then the diamond mech began to throw its head down again, towards the crippled part of the building that it had already smashed them against, wanting to flatten them for good. Stephen yelped, "Help!" and Garnet had already seen this unlucky position. The magenta permafusion, in a much better foothold near the nose, reached down with a shape-shifted hand like a lasso and grabbed him, yanking him up into the air. Momentum lurched to the left as they plummeted to the right, the building getting closer. Garnet was having trouble climbing with only one hand, so Stephen tried to help by supporting himself, finding a new place to grab, heaving himself up, almost there, almost. Finally, Garnet and Stephen grasped the edge of the iris and tugged themselves up, right after all of the others had gotten in. Stephen braced himself against the wall and felt the second smash jostle what felt like the whole world. He waited for the vibrations to recede, feeling like all of his bones were jarred and cracked. Okay, Stephen gasped, still shaken. "Is everyone all right?" "Yeah, barely," Amethyst reported. "I'm okay," Pearl said. "We have to keep moving," Garnet said, keeping a hand on Stephen in case if he fell. "Come on." And so, the crystal gem slid down the smooth corridor of the pupil, deeper and deeper, into White Diamond's head. The tunnel was longer than he expected, with barely any places to hold on to. The mech ship was adjusting itself like before, and that nearly made him lose his footing a few times, but eventually it settled back upright, seeming to realize that the confrontation was near, and jostling around would not make the fight any easier. Finally, a light at the end of the tunnel. Stephen, Garnet, Amethyst, and Pearl all appeared over the edge into White's throne room. Stephen wondered if it could really be called a throne room. There were no features to it at all. No decorations, no windows, no etchings on the walls. It was just one cavernous gray dome, perfectly round at the top and perfectly flat on the floor, like a snow globe where they were the tiny figurines inside. It was colorless and solid, giving him the impression that if he entered, all of the color would disappear from the world. And there she was, White Diamond. The overpoweringly glamorous monarch was standing at the back of the dome, perfectly centered. Her glittering galaxy-patterned robes trailed underneath her arms, which were outstretched as they always were. She was so bright that it was painful to look at her, her glittering heels just as pristine as her painted black lips, black nails, and feathery black eyelashes. White Diamond's platinum pupils were already looking towards him, making a powerful eye contact that he had to force himself to not look away from, like she had been expecting him to appear in that exact spot for a while now. Beside her, under each arm, was Yellow and Blue. Yellow's sharp, armored figure was in shades of gray, white, and black, and so was Blue's flowing, robe-adorned one. They held the same grinning stare, holding their arms up in the same posture, motionless like two great statues. "You made it, Pink. How lovely," White Diamond said, her voice tripling through Yellow and Blue's mouths eerily. Stephen pulled himself together, trying not to look too frightened by her unsettling stares. He put on a brave face and jumped down from the pupils' corridor, floating down to the smooth gray floor and landing lightly. Garnet, Amethyst, and Pearl followed his lead without question, floating to land behind him. With them, Stephen felt a little bit better. He hoped that he would be able to do this. He had to do this, or else. "White Diamond," Stephen said, forcing away all stammering doubts from his tone, his voice loud and clear. "My name is Steven Universe, and I'm here to—" "I'm so glad you were able to come, Starlight," White Pearl interrupted, abruptly rising up from the floor with another white bubble. "Now we can begin." White Pearl was sent gliding backwards beneath White's feet between yellow and blue, as White Diamond spoke. "You know, Pink, I'm very glad that you were able to bring my attention to the flaws of my fellow diamonds. Without you interfering, I would have never discovered how broken they were." "What?" Stephen said, but White was barreling on with her speech, not caring. "Poor Yellow, so strong yet so weak when it comes to Blue. And miserable Blue, her emotions led her to believe that she needs you, Pink. But I can assure you that I will not make her mistake. I know that I do not need you." The sinister tone underneath that made him feel suddenly very small underneath her radiant light. Threatened. White continued, "But it would be preferable if you would comply, so please, be a dear and remove yourself from that child and forget this whole charade with those off-colors. I would love to put you back in your place where you belong." Stephen didn't know what to say to that. But Amethyst stepped forwards, riled up. "Yo, what are you even talking about, you big shiny a-hole?" White's four gazes moved to Amethyst, pausing, thinking, and then back to Stephen. "Such a foul mouth," her voices sighed. "Why do you allow such vulgar language, Pink? This rude little runt can be fixed up, you see." Then, without giving any more warning than that, White's eyes began to glow as bright as the sun, as a million suns, making everything else in the room darken in contrast. A beam of light, brilliant and pure, shot downwards right towards Amethyst, hitting her square in the chest in her gem. "Amethyst!" all of them yelled, as the small corpse was blown backwards, flat on her back. Stephen rushed over to her, but Amethyst was already getting up, holding her gem and coughing. "Is that all you got?" she challenged bravely, before crumbling down again in pain. "Amethyst!" Stephen cried. "What's wrong? Did she crack you?" Amethyst only groaned in response, her form vibrating unsteadily, like a glitching piece of code. Stephen saw between her fingers that her gem was now bleached white, drained of all of the violet and indigo hues that had sparkled within it before. And that colorless stain was spreading through her whole form, just like yellow and blue, sucking away all of her color. Amethyst screamed at first, but when the gray infection closed around her, finishing its work, she cut off abruptly and collapsed to the floor. "Stop!" Pearl shouted shrilly, drawing her spear from her forehead and racing towards White, on the attack. But White's eyes flashed again, and the same beam of blinding light connected with Pearl's gemstone, throwing her off of her feet, her spear glitching out of existence. "Pearl!" Stephen yelled, still nilled by Amethyst. "No! Pearl!" He heard another voice echo. He looked up, seeing Bismuth lunging down from the pupil, having just gotten in, with Lapis and Peridot shooting in behind her. Bismuth ran to Pearl, who was already bleached gray and white, too late. "What did you do to her?" Bismuth hollered up at White. "You better undo it right now, or I'll—" Another shot of the brilliant light, hitting Bismuth in the chest, in her gem. And now Bismuth was collapsed on the floor too, the rainbow colors gone from her hair, the rest of her grayer than before. This was getting too out of hand. It was happening too fast. She wasn't even giving him a chance to talk. "Stop! Everyone, just stop!" Stephen tried, standing up, waving his arms around. "Please, we just want to talk!" But White Diamond ignored him. She shot beams of light at Amethyst, at Peridot, and the two dropped from the sky, the gray stain overtaking them too. "Wait!" Stephen choked out, desperate. But as Garnet darted forwards to help, to do something, her palms were shot with the whitewashing light, and she was forced to pop apart into Ruby and Sapphire, who were the color of stone too now, motionless on the floor. They were failing. All of them were failing. It wasn't working. It's not... Stephen staggered back, covering his gem, expecting the same light to zap him into a colorless heap. But White didn't shine her eyes any longer, leaning back and sighing, eyes closed like she was focusing. "Goodness, Starlight, all of those off-colors are so rude. I normally wouldn't stretch myself so thin, but they've left me no choice on the matter." "White, please!" Stephen yelled, the blood roaring in his ears, wanting to run to the others, all of them at once, to figure out if they were okay. "Please, stop! I just want to talk to you! Don't hurt them!" Oh, I'm not hurting them, White breathed, opening her platinum eyes again to pin him with her four gazes again. I'm improving them. Improving? Stephen repeated, staring around at the collapsed forms of his family. What do you mean? Don't you see their errors? White Diamond cackled. So many mistakes can be made of free will. Your friends here are all deeply flawed. She lowered a long black nail, yellow, blue, and white pearl mirroring her perfectly. She pointed towards Amethyst and said, Insecure, she pointed next to Pearl. Obsessed, she pointed to Bismuth. Compulsive, Lapis next. Terrified, Peridot. Powerless, and lastly, Sapphire and Ruby. Dependent. And then her glossy black nail lowered towards him, her eyes quirking in condescending pity. And you, Pink, she sighed deeply in disappointment. Childish, immature, naive, trusting. She giggled, shaking her head like she was scolding a bad puppy. And oh, so very confused. Stephen felt pinned beneath her gaze, his words abandoning him. Before, he had thought of so many different ways to persuade her, so many different points that he could make about choosing what to cherish and realizing that there's more to life than rules and how to be happy as a family. They had to listen to each other, but now Stephen was reduced to defense and defense only. My family isn't flawed, Stephen squeaked up at her, trying to regain his bravery, even though the attack on his family was making him feel like he was going to collapse as well. I mean, they are, but that's what makes them great. I love them no matter what, flawed and all. White Diamond's eyes crinkled, her lips pursing in amusement. You should really reconsider that decision, she said. If you just accept that there's something wrong with them, then you can finally wipe away those faults. Here, Pink, watch and learn. Let me handle this. White snapped her long-nailed fingers. All at once, his collapsed family began to move. One by one, they drew themselves up, their movements jerky and robotic, like they were puppets being pulled on by the marionette, pulled into a standing position. Stephen felt sick at the sight, and he felt even worse whenever he saw what had become of their expressions. All of them were matching blank smiles. Their eyes were unfocused, staring at something far away, completely blank like they were just dolls being played with. Oh, thank you, White Diamond, Amethyst chirped in a voice that did not match her at all. I feel so much better now. Yes, thank you, White Diamond, Sapphire agreed, standing up next to Ruby, who nodded. How generous. Pearl rose beside them. I feel just splendid now. Yes, splendid, Lapis and Peridot chimed. Perfect, Bismuth added. All of them, all at the same time, called out, Thank you, White Diamond. We are now flawless, as you are. Stephen stared around at them all, mortified, as they all glided towards each other, forming a line, their arms all extended in praise, their blank smiles turned upwards at White. See, Starlight, White said, gesturing to them. All better now. They don't have to worry about a thing anymore. Now they are perfect. Now they are me. Her radiance shone bright as ever, making him shield his eyes, feeling so helpless, so alone. When the light faded down to its usual glow, Stephen looked back up at her, yelping, No, White, let them go! You can't do this! Their flaws make them who they are! You can't just erase them! Oh, yes, I can, White countered calmly. I just did, didn't I? She chuckled, the rumbling noise echoing through every single gem in the throne room, rumbling through the walls. You know, I've figured out why you do this, Pink, White continued. You surround yourself with lower life forms because it makes you feel better. It feels good, doesn't it, to be the best of the worst? She smiled sweetly and said, You were already the off-color diamond. Surrounded by perfect diamonds, you couldn't stand it, could you? So instead, you fled to Earth, where even as an off-color diamond, you were better than all of the other little gems combined. Off-color? Stephen breathed. What do you mean? White sighed, her lip curling in disgust for a moment before she smoothed out her features into a grin again. You were meant to be red diamond, but instead your hue was lighter, different, pink. You were so small and childish, but I was merciful enough to keep you after Blue became so fond of you. I wonder if you were always meant, since you were merged, to seek others like you, so you could put them underneath you and reassure yourself that you were fit to be their leader, a diamond. Stephen was still reeling from what she'd just told him. Red diamond? It made sense, he thought. Pink was so much smaller, so different. He shook his head, shoving the revelation away. He had more important things to address than the intended hue of his gem. Why, even if all that stuff you're saying was true, Stephen began, picking up speed as he latched onto the hope, about being the best of the worst, it's not true for me. She might have done that on purpose, maybe, but I'm not doing that. I really do love them. Whatever you do mean, Starlight, White cooed in false confusion. I'm not your Starlight, Stephen explained. I'm not Pink Diamond. I'm Stephen. White, as well as all the bleached gems in the throne room, burst out into laughter. The giggling chortles were like a witch's, echoing over and over and over again through so many mouths, ringing through his ears like a crowd, pushing at him, humiliating him. I'm not, he squeaked, knowing how helplessly frustrated he sounded. I'm not my mom! That word, mom, seemed to make her laugh even harder. Stephen snapped his mouth shut, feeling a hot flush to his cheeks, her witch laugh slicing through his ears, making him want to just shut her up. Your mom? White breathed, once she could, wiping away a tear. Oh, Starlight, stop lying to yourself. The spell was punctured by a ferocious battle cry behind them all. Every head snapped up to see Connie plunging down out of the people entrance, her new sword tucked close as she rolled into a landing on the smooth gray floor, coming out of it to raise the blade into battle positions. Guys, I'm here! Connie shouted before skidding to a confused stop. Huh? She could see the color and the expressions of the crystal gems. Stephen watched the surprise stun her long enough to let Pearl break out of the formation that she had held, her spear swinging out of her gemstone. Connie blocked the initial swipe downwards with a clang, Pearl's expression not changing as she did. Pearl? Connie yelped. Pearl, where do you... Pearl didn't bother with conversation. She spun and swiped again and again, forcing Connie to retreat step by step, parrying whenever she could, but not attacking. Pearl! She yelled. Snap out of it! It's me! Connie, run! Stephen hollered to her. She's being mind-controlled or something! He had been rushing forwards to help Connie, but he felt Bismuth's big hands clamp onto his forearm, yanking him back. Stephen struggled against her, but he didn't summon up his weapon, afraid of hurting her. That was probably the very reason that she was able to grab him with both arms, keeping him wrapped up against her body. Almost as if she were hugging him, though it was tight and clearly not out of comfort. Stephen! Connie cried, seeing everyone else converging in towards her. Connie was an excellent sword fighter, but even she couldn't take on 6 gems at once, especially if she was trying not to hurt them. Stephen tried to wriggle around and escape from Bismuth, but the big gem kept him firmly in place, helpless as Connie was overwhelmed. Pearl grabbed Connie's sword and wrenched it away from her, casting it away, letting it clatter and skitter away on the floor. Connie was grabbed and then lifted in the air by Pearl, her mouth covered. All the bleached gems returned to a circle around Stephen, each perfectly spaced between each other. Stephen was dropped in the middle of them, Connie out of reach beyond the circle, still being held back by Pearl. Let her go! Stephen demanded. I don't want to fight! I just want to talk, please! Oh, I just want to talk too, White Diamond agreed. So let's talk, shall we? Stephen wasn't stupid enough to think that this meant that she was going to listen to him. No, this meant that she expected for him to listen, and only him. So, where were we? White cleared her throat. Ah, yes. You are Pink Diamond. It is a simple, undeniable fact, and telling me otherwise will not change that. Stephen blanched, shaking his head. But, no, I'm not. I'm really not. I'm Stephen. Why don't you... Are you sure that you're not? White Diamond pressed. Think about it for a moment, Starlight. Don't you know things about her that you couldn't possibly know? At first, Stephen shook his head, preparing to argue. But when he opened his mouth, he stopped, a flickering chill tapping through his memory. The dream about Yellow on that jungle moon, punching the glass pane and splitting Pink's contorted, angry face into a million copies. The familiarity of the leg ship, how it responded to him easily. The familiarity of everything here, really. Yellow, blue, white. He had recognized them before he even knew their name. The familiarity of Pink's room, of Pink's pebbles. The familiarity of wearing her dressy, doll-like outfit. The familiarity of the Dark Time Tower. And the dreams. So many dreams. No, I don't... Stephen tried, voice crackling weakly against it. That doesn't mean anything. Grotesquely vomiting up his mother's hair, being scolded by Blue Diamond in the tower, something squirming around inside of him, something alive, someone... My powers help me connect to people, Stephen tried, desperate. That's it. I'm connecting with her. I'm not her. I'm just feeling her feelings. Even he could hear how little sense that made. Switching from his mother to him, back and forth like the channels of a TV being controlled by an indecisive viewer. Pink, rose, Stephen, pink, rose, Stephen, pink, rose, Stephen, pink, rose, pink, rose, pink. Can't you see the truth? White's voice is smoothed over his ears, relaxed and all-knowing. It's been inside of you all along. You have always been Pink Diamond, hiding away in an amnesiac-ridden body. This Steven Universe creature is a figment of your hopeful imagination. He doesn't exist. He never did. The whole universe, his whole being, was being stripped away, revealing the ugly truth underneath. And he couldn't deny it, because he knew that it was true. White Diamond was right about him, right about her. Stephen wasn't real. He felt paralyzed with despair, the horrible squirming emotion tearing up through him, shredding his thoughts apart, destroying everything that he'd been trying for so long to deny. It was getting hard to breathe. He felt sick, shaky, lost, not real. "Don't listen to her, Stephen!" Connie's voice shrieked to him from very, very far away. "She's just trying to mess with you!" Connie's words didn't reinforce his confidence like they usually would, and that scared him. He wasn't sure. He didn't know. He didn't want to know. No. This couldn't be the truth. He couldn't be Pink. He was Stephen, right? Stephen dragged his gaze back up to White, who was smiling her beaming, too-perfect smile, knowing that he was understanding now, knowing that his resolve was giving in to her truth. "Now, with that all sorted out," White said sweetly, "we can sever your ties with that organic creature and fit you back into your rightful place, Pink." Stephen was staring into her eyes, the ghostly white diamond-shaped pupil ringed with a glittering silver iris, radiating such light, such purity, so overpowering and godlike that he found that he could no longer move. It was hypnotizing. Stephen just stood there, trembling, as White Diamond reached her massive, car-sized hand down towards him and plucked him off the ground. Connie screamed his name, but he couldn't hear her. White Diamond's fingers closed around his tiny, insignificantly weak body, and he gasped at the sensation. White Diamond was as hot as a light bulb, almost too intense to touch, and those heated fingers were clamping around him, squeezing him too tight, too hot. White Diamond lifted him high up into the air, for what felt like 1,000,000 miles off the ground, and Stephen couldn't do anything about it. The shock of the heat from her hand helped him realize he was in danger, and he was struggling now, trying to wriggle out of her grasp, but her fingers were unmoving and solid, like as if he were encased in concrete, trapping him, suffocating him. "Now, Starlight, this has gone on long enough," White sighed, her face so close to his that he could see every detail of her features. Every individual black eyelash, every line in her cheeks, every tooth in her mouth. Hopeless panic pounded through him, his mouth dry, unable to look away. One of the fingers on the hand that was holding him reached down, the nail hooking onto his shirt and pulling it up, exposing his gem. No. Stephen already knew what was going to happen to him. He could see the intent in her eyes, and his whole mind was overwhelmed by shrieking panic. But all he could do was whimper through a quavering, squeaky voice. "Please." White Diamond didn't listen. Instead, she raised the other hand. No, he could see it now. He knew what was going to happen. She pinched the talons of her forefinger and thumb around the circular edge of his gem. Stephen felt a surging lurch of heat, suffocated by horror. No, please, no, she was going to... "It's time to come out, Pink," White sang. Stephen screwed his eyes shut tight, bracing himself, completely vulnerable and helpless, and knowing that whatever was about to happen to him, it would involve pain beyond anything he'd ever imagined. White Diamond pulled. Stephen's entire world became nothing but excruciating agony. His gem didn't come out cleanly. It took 3 wrenching yanks, each one somehow more painful than the last, feeling like all of his organs were being torn out of his body, flopped inside out, tearing and ripping and pulling on his gem until it was out. It hurt. It hurt so bad, he couldn't comprehend it. It was just numb and cold, bleeding, blood, so much blood. Stephen looked, peeking, wanting to see what had happened to him. The very last thing that he saw before blacking out was the hole that had been ripped open in his belly and the back spike end of his gem, slick with crimson with a fleshy, trailing cord broken on the end. Something was wrong. Something was wrong. Something was missing. Someone. He needed them. He needed them. It was so cold. The chill was crawling through all of his bones, through every cell in his body, sucking up all the warmth. It hurt. It hurt so bad. It hurt more than anything he'd ever experienced before, and even beyond that. He was dying. He knew he was dying. "Stephen! Oh my God, please, Stephen, wake up!" The voice was distant, almost insignificant compared to the awful, overriding pain. Everything was wrong. He couldn't hear right, or see right, or think right. It hurt so bad. Movement. Horrible pressure, squeezing around the pain, making it worse. He made a noise, kicking out, wanting it to stop. Please, please, stop. Please, Stephen, come on, wake up. Connie. That was Connie. What had happened to him? He tried to speak. It was hard to form words altogether, his sentences being blasted apart by pain whenever he tried to assemble them. All that came out was a whimpering rasp. Where's my... Stephen's eyes were open again. He was lying down on his back in a big, gray room. He could hardly remember how he got here. He could hardly remember why he was in so much pain. Connie was leaning over him, one hand holding down the pressure on his gut, another patting the side of his face, trying to wake him. She looked frantic, tears spilling down her face, desperately repeating his name. Stephen, please. He felt cold and numb. Something was missing. Something important. His brain felt like it had been split in half. A part of him was blacked out still somewhere else. What happened to him? Stephen looked down, catching a glimpse of Connie's hand pressing her jacket into his belly, which was soaked with red. Red from... "Don't look at it!" Connie sobbed, hysterical. "Don't look at it! Just stay with me! Please, don't die! Another voice, a louder, terrifying one, boomed above them. Pink, you got gross red bits all over your gem." That was when he remembered how he'd gotten like this. White had pulled out his gem. He could see her through blurred, swirling vision, White picking pieces of his flesh off of his glittering pink gem, her lip curling in disgust, uncaring of Stephen's suffering as he lied at her feet, barely clinging to life. Stephen contorted in agony as a wave of awful iciness swept up through him, dragging and slow. It hurt. It was more than he could take. Too much. Stephen wanted to die. He wanted it to end. He wanted White Diamond to stomp on him with her heels to end the torture. Please, let me die. But Stephen didn't die. He wasn't allowed to, not yet. The other half of his being wasn't going to let him go that easy. Stephen felt something happen to the half of him that was now stolen from him. He could feel him, a second consciousness, one that was wanting to come out. His gem began to glow, pulling itself free from White's nails, shining like a little captured star. It was reforming. Everyone watched, transfixed, as his gem flipped itself over, spike end up in the position that he knew belonged to his mom. Liquid light spilled out of it, creating a poofy-haired, doll-dressed figure. Stephen felt choking despair begin to sink through him. It would reform into his mother, Pink Diamond. Stephen really didn't exist. He was just a locked box that had kept the true treasure hidden away for so long. But then, bewildering everyone in the room, his gem changed its mind. It flicked sideways, showing the circular face like a quartz. The liquid light shrank into a figure that had a long flowing dress, with big curly hair like a bouquet of roses. Stephen felt his hopes crash again. Of course, it had reformed to be Rose forever, still pink, just in a costume. But then the gem decided that Rose wasn't right either. Instead, his gem's light shrank further. He watched, wondering if he was hallucinating from the pain, as his gem began to take on his form instead. A small, pudgy boy with curly hair, large eyes, and a star-printed shirt appeared. Except he was made entirely out of pink light, a fluorescent glow like a lantern, shining with light, alive, himself. Stephen's pink twin floated slowly to the ground, eyes closed and face relaxed, until he landed softly on the gray floor. Stephen's pink twin opened its eyes, blinking for a moment as if adjusting to the light. And then its head slowly rotated towards Stephen was lying. Its pupils widened like a cat's whenever it saw him. Expressionless. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. White was staring at the pink Stephen in confused mortification, her mouth agape. Everyone else was matching her expression, being her hive mind. Stephen found that, despite the shock of what just happened, he couldn't take the pain any longer. He had to get to his gem. The urge was powerful, more powerful than the need for food or water or air, pushing him to act. Stephen began to crawl up, trying to get his legs underneath him even though they no longer had feeling in them. He reached out desperately, but instead collapsed again. His fall had been lessened by Connie, but that didn't stop the lurching, horrible wave of agony that coursed upwards through him, coming on as a wave of colors that he'd never seen before, twisting through him, twisting. Stephen coughed out a strangled scream, his whole body racked of shuddering. He tasted blood in his mouth. He was cold. He needed his gem to be warm. His gem straightened up at that, alert. Stephen could see, distantly, through his gem's eyes. He could see himself, how pale he was, how shaky and weak he was, and the deadly red stain from Connie's attempts to stop the bleeding. His gem felt the same urge to return as he did. He could feel it, occupying 2 different spaces, 2 different people. So, his gem, without saying a word, began to make his way across the room towards him. There was an invisible line connecting them, reeling Stephen in, the need for his gem so strong that it almost numbed the pain out of his absence. Stephen tried to move again, trying to get up and stumble to his gem, but Connie's arms were trying to hold him still, trying to squeeze her jacket into the open wound in his belly, to retain what little blood he hadn't lost yet. "Help," Stephen groaned, reaching for his gem again. Connie seemed to understand what he needed. She said, "Okay, I will, hang on," and readjusted, scooping him up bridal style. "Hold this here, hold it," Connie whispered to him, moving one of his hands to the bloody jacket. "Keep pressure on it." Stephen's arms felt weak, but he tried to do what she said, still retaining eye contact with his gem, aching for its warmth, just out of reach. "What is this?" White Diamond sputtered, seeming to finally come out of the shock. "Where's Pink?" His gem stopped suddenly. Its face was wiped of emotion, the eyes blank. He didn't look at White as he mumbled in a whispery voice, slow like it wasn't sure how to form words yet. "She's gone." White's face rippled with indignity. "What did you say?" she snapped demandingly. "Answer me!" Stephen's gem turned its head upwards at her in one robotic movement, meeting White's gaze with such an intense stare that she jerked back. And then it opened its mouth and screamed, louder than an atomic bomb. "She's gone!" The violent repercussion of the blasting words exploded out of his gem in a sound wave, a crater crackling out from his feet, smashing into everything in the room, throwing them back. His gem's roar seemed to make the entire universe quake, the echoes lasting long after his gem had shut its mouth, vibrating and shaking through every atom of the galaxy, fading into stunned silence. A ringing followed the sound wave in Stephen's ears, and he felt blood trickling down either side of his face. The same had happened to Connie, and she struggled not to drop Stephen, jostled back by the power of the sound. White stared, arms held out to balance herself, utterly speechless. She didn't argue. Satisfied, his gem looked away from White, back to Stephen, and continued its calm march towards his other half. "No, stop!" White demanded, seeming too afraid of approaching now. "Don't you dare take another step!" His gem kept on walking, ignoring her, his eyes all for Stephen. Connie was carrying Stephen step by step, and Stephen was reaching, so desperate to get to his gem that the need was crackling rigidly through every thought, blocking out almost anything else. "That's enough!" White Diamond snarled. Her eyes began to glow brightly, so brightly that it made everything else look black, the brilliant purity of the glow ready to bleach his gem into submission. She fired the beam of light right at Stephen's gem, and he felt a jolt of resistance, clinging to Connie, his ragged breaths tight and strained. But when the beam faded, his gem was untouched. It had raised something like a shield to deflect her light, some sort of crystalline, sparkling dome, like a sharper version of his bubble. "Don't you raise your shield at me!" White hissed, her eyes glowing again. This time, all of the bleached gems, yellow, blue, white pearl, sapphire, ruby, amethyst, pearl, bismuth, lapis, peridot, all of their eyes glowed too, White's power doubling through them, tripling over and over. "I only want you to be yourself again," White yelled. "If you can't do that, I'll do it for you!" And then all 20 eyes fired, inwards to his gem's dome. Stephen wailed, terrified that his gem would be taken away, the whole throne room shivering like there was an earthquake as the light drilled inwards at his gem's crystalline dome. But his gem stayed calm and expressionless. It raised up its hands and pushed outwards, the reflective dome throwing the light off in a blasting wave. White Diamond shrieked and fell forwards, the giant monarch toppling and crashing down with the force of a skyscraper being knocked over, making everyone jump at least a foot in the air from the impact. Connie teetered, struggling to stay steady, and Stephen cried out, the movement making Payne's dig further into his gut. But his gem was okay still, and when the attack was gone, it lowered the dome and continued to walk towards Stephen. White dragged her eyes open, her face level with the ground now, watching in astonishment as Stephen and his gem got closer, 5 yards, 3 yards, 2, 1. Stephen was now touching his gem's face with the hand that he'd reached out, and he felt a wonderful, life-giving warmth washing up through his palm. His gem's light was wonderful, and Stephen needed it. He needed all of it. Here, Connie breathed, not seeming to know what else to say, passing Stephen to his gem's outstretched arms. Stephen was being held by his gem now, and it was incredible, the warmth chasing away the cold, assuring him that he would be okay now. Stephen stared at his pink reflection and felt emotions swelling in his chest. It wasn't Pink Diamond. It wasn't Rose either. It was Stephen. Stephen hugged around his gem's shoulders, squeezing him tight with all the strength that he had left, feeling a tearful laugh rising in his throat. His gem was unresponsive and blank at first, but then pure, unfiltered joy melted through his features, and he hugged his other half back, bubbly laughter fizzling up inside of him to match. "What are you, Pink? Why are you laughing?" White gasped. Stephen and his gem were too happy to be together to hear her. His gem swung him around and around, giggling and smiling just as Stephen was, the embrace full of wonderful, eternal contentment. The warmth of his gem filled up the gaping wound that it had left behind, and Stephen felt the mind-numbing pain fade, their forms melting into one another as they spun and spun and spun and laughed, so blissfully relieved of the full truth of what they were, of who he was. Stephen was Stephen. He'd always just been Stephen. He was already the answer. When the light of them fusing flaked off of him, Stephen was standing there, hugging himself, whole and healed again, his gem nestled back into his belly button where it had always meant to be. He had tears in his eyes, relieved, content tears. It was over. The pain was gone. He was Stephen again. Yay! Woo! It's over! Thank you for watching all the way to the end. I hope you liked it, and if you would like to see more of this, then you can tell me, I guess. I think I might want to make a sort of voting thingy where, because, like, I have several different little stories already prepared and stuff. I just don't know which ones you guys want me to put effort into. So if you want more stuff and you want it to be of specific stuff, then tell me the stuff, and then I'll do the stuff. Okay, so bye. Sorry, I've tried to record this like 8 different times, please. This is the best recording I can get. I'm sorry.